Hartmut, thank you very much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to finally, well, we met, but finally meet you. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi, Gilad. I'm doing fantastically well. So thank you for having me. It's a big excitement to be here on your platform. It's actually great. I'm so much looking forward to actually to talk to you.
The honor is all mine, and I think that congratulations in place. You guys in CyberWrite managed to hit another important milestone and bring in MAPRE as a partner, or you have a partnership with MAPRE on cyber insurance. So before we dig into business and all that stuff, I usually ask my guest speakers a little bit about themselves to bring the personality. Any hobbies, anything that you love?
Yeah, so it's again, right? So it's I had quite some interesting hobbies in my past life as a student and preparing and you know you have to give up most of these hobbies, or at least I had to give them up when I actually started work in the corporate world, but which I don't do anymore, and that gives me actually a great opportunity actually to find these hobbies from the past back and spend some time in it. And I spend a lot of my time with friends on opera music. So we really love opera music. I love opera music. In fact, we've been traveling the world to actually look into performances from certain opera players. And yeah, that's what we're really excited about. And it's great to actually catch up with friends and spend some quality time with them. Thankfully, the family supports it as well, and they're into it as well.
That's great, because it really depends. There are a few operas that are a little bit challenging for me, so I try to hear the one in Sanskrit that was a little bit difficult. More on the lighter ones, Italian and Spanish. Italian. Yeah. Any favorites?
Listen, there's the universe is so broad, and to your point, right? So it's I'm not really into Sanskrit and anything like that, but it's you actually have to pick your battle, right? So it's and what we actually focused on was one composer, which is an Italian one, is Gioacchino Rossini. And why do we like Gioacchino Rossini? Because it's not just about the music. In fact, after composing 39 operas, he actually stopped writing. And at a fairly young age, and then he actually focused on writing recipe books. So he was a very famous chef, and in addition to that, and when we, for example, organize our events, right, and organize our events in the past, where we actually invite musicians to our home and invite guests over, we always make sure that we're going to prepare dinner according to the recipe books of Gioacchino Rossini. Very few people know that, but it's quite interesting. If you dive into the details of his life, it's a very interesting character. It's a fun guy, really a fun guy.
I love it. I can see how a musician, and especially a composer, can correlate with being a chef. The focus, the methodology. You need to be very disciplined for that, and very creative. You know how to break it down and build it back up again with all the different structures. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. How did you get into insurance? What's your background?
So I'm actually a trained lawyer. So it's I studied law in Germany and in the US. And in fact, like a lot of people actually say that they ended up in insurance by chance. Well, I don't think that was very true with me. So because when I spent time in the US, in a law firm in the US, we were involved in D&O litigation. And D&O was something which was not really well known in Germany. So when I moved back to Germany, right, there was an insurance company looking for D&O underwriters. And there were only a few people who would actually know what D&O was at the time. So it's and I didn't know the company, so there was no internet available there, so you couldn't actually enter it in Google or anything. I did a microfiche research. Most people don't know what microfiche is in these days. And apparently it was the biggest insurance company in the world, which was AIG at the time. So I was hired by AIG to become a D&O underwriter. And so I actually worked my way through all of the ranks inside of the company with regards to the underwriting part of it, and highly focused on D&O. So very quickly I then specialized in dual listed organizations, companies in Germany, which are listed in Germany. Actually, we were seeking a second listing in the US, and which had a massive increase in exposure for them. And so that was actually the topic, the first topic I really focused on. Yeah, so it's I'm actually by training, I'm a D&O underwriter, and I thought it was super interesting to be involved in this line of business straight from the beginning, because we talked about creativity. There was a lot of creativity in these days involved in order to really knock this line off the ground and make it a marketable product in Germany and then across Europe. It was fascinating.
You are very known for your career in Allianz. Can we talk about
that? Sure. So it's I was with the company for 14 years. So you know, my qualifications at AIG and also at Marsh before kind of got me the job at Allianz. I was hired there to build the global financial lines unit, which I've done for 4 years. And part of that job was actually in 2012 to launch the first cyber policy and cyber program in Germany and for Europe, standalone policy, and to build up the Cyber Excellence Center for the entire Allianz Group. So that was 2012, which feels like a century ago, but in fact it's only 11 years ago. So after I've done that for 4 years, I was actually promoted to the board and became the Chief Underwriting Officer and Deputy CEO for their large corporate business in Allianz. And after did that job for 8 years, and then I changed board positions to become the Chief Regions&Markets Officer, which is basically I looked after an entire region, which at the time was basically the region of EMEA, that entire time zone from the Nordics to the south. And and then I decided to leave Allianz and to do something, something I'd say very much more interesting at the time, because when I was at Allianz, I've been focusing already a lot on startups. And before Allianz X was actually founded, we did a lot of things in order to support startups, work with them, try to get under their skin in terms of where could they actually be in addition to our services, where could they help us to actually have better assessments of underlying risk, etc. So I kind of had an affiliation with this kind of business, and in that capacity, I also met Nir already in 2016, 1 year before CyberWrite was in fact founded, and I met him because I did a large tender for Allianz. Because I didn't feel comfortable anymore to actually base the underwriting and cyber only on paper, and which was very much the case in 2012 when we rolled out the first cyber policy program. So we wanted to change this in order to get more analytics involved and more data involved and so forth, right? And he had a great idea, had a mock-up version of a platform, but this is how we met. And later on, again, when I left Allianz, right? So it's he reached out after my cool-off period, we thought about why don't we actually do something together. This is how I actually joined CyberWrite.
Cool. I love it when people already provide the answer to the question that I wanted to ask next. What brought you to CyberWrite? But I think that you already answered that. Let's talk a little bit more about what's the big difference, right? Many people, we see more and more I would call it executive and insurance veterans coming to the startups, right? At the beginning, we saw many entrepreneurs, engineer-driven entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley, Israel, all kinds of different locations, full of a spirit. Let's make a change. Let's make some sort of a difference. But now we see more and more veterans. So what's the big difference between working for Allianz, a multi-billion-dollar company, to a startup? And a great startup, I think.
First of all, right, I mean, I worked for 3 very large firms in the insurance industry, right? I started, as I mentioned, with AIG, then moved on to the other side of the fence, being an underwriter for 12 years. I was interested, right? How is it like actually selling this stuff and talk to clients directly and so forth, right? So I joined Marsh as a broker, another very large entity, and then from Marsh, I moved into another blue chip organization, Allianz, fantastic organization, great company, building stuff for them, and doing new things. But when you've done that for like more than 2 decades, right? You think about what is it you would like to do next? What is actually the difference? What is it? What really triggers your interest? And I didn't really feel like changing one blue chip for another and just changing colors, but doing always the same old stuff. So I actually decided to do something totally different, and it's almost like reinventing yourself. Now you can't really actually leave everything behind, all your qualifications, all your experience. You still want to use your experience, and one way to do this is actually to combine that. And it is I talk about this now in almost like 30 seconds. It took me a longer time to really identify what is it really you would like to do. And so then I made that decision to actually move more towards the startup environment as an advisory, in an advisory role. And I've done that not only for CyberWrite, but also for other companies. So I actually spent some time in a company focusing on quantum computing. I spent some time in a company focusing on finding standardized risk models for large corporate business, etc. And so I actually spent time also with CyberWrite. And since I knew Neil already, this engagement very quickly developed quite nicely. So it's and then he asked me, why don't you actually join us on a permanent basis? And I said, yeah, why not? It's a lot of fun, and I think we're doing a lot of things together. And I think the company today, and we had a very good year this year, is actually, in fact, is a very successful organization, very successful company. CyberWrite exists in 7 years now already, so we are in full scale-up mode, and we see that the services we are providing to our customers, right, which is more large reinsurance entities, insurance companies, brokers, and agencies, really enjoys a very nice pickup in the market, which is great. Right. But I guess we come to this point later on again.
You have the perspective of blue chip, large insurance organizations, underwriters, Marsh, AIG, of course, Allianz, and now you have the perspective of, I would say, startups, a little bit more nimble. What insurance companies need to know? What did you learn that they need to learn that they haven't? Because working with the InsurTechs who provide services, it's not well, they think it's straightforward, but from the big organization, it's a little bit more complicated. So what do they need to know?
I mean, what you basically asking is, right, what is it, from my experience from the large corporate, I can bring along to startups in order to make them successful, right? So, and for me, right, what I really enjoy being working in a startup is really, it's the speed, right? It is the speed of decision making. It is actually the failure culture, which simply a lot of large corporates talk about failure culture. In fact, in insurance, I must say, it doesn't really exist. So when you make a massive mistake as an underwriter, there will be massive losses, and you will feel it, right? Nobody would actually say, "Thank you for making this mistake. Please learn from it and never do it again." That's a problem. So it's in a startup that is something completely different. So it is really you can test certain things, with clients and so forth, which I very much like. So the second thing, which I think is really important, is the laser sharp focus. In a startup, you have to be laser sharp focused. Otherwise, you will never really get through with your products and really get this to market launch. And in order to be razor sharp focused, you also actually have to identify the problem areas you're trying to solve very clearly. And this actually has to be benchmarked with a lot of conversations you have in the market. At CyberWrite, for example, we had before the launch and before the product was emerging, we had hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations with individuals in the industry to identify what is really the problem. And at the time, when 7 years ago, the problem was really that cyber was not really marketable because there was so little knowledge out there in the market from an intermediary perspective, but also from an underwriting perspective. That this was actually the first problem we had to solve. Now, it is not solvable with a lot of hands, i.e., hire a lot of people. You got to be a little bit smarter around that in order to actually create these efficiencies we're all looking for, and that's why we immediately focused on data and analytics of this data in order to really help organizations like underwriters and large reinsurance and insurance entities to have the right loss pick for their portfolios. And we see this right now with some of our clients, which are now writing this business to record low loss ratios in their entire portfolio. Other components and other problems then appeared throughout the journey. Right? I give you an example. 7 years ago, nobody really discussed and nobody was really fussed about something we call aggregated exposures, i.e., one event triggers not just one policy, but one event triggers hundreds, if not thousands of policies at the same time, which is a big problem. So in order to really get transparency around how big is the problem in your portfolio, you need to have a data platform which helps you to assess that. And this is exactly what we do as well. So it's not only that we're focusing on small and singular risks, we also focus on portfolios and large portfolios. So we, for example, today have reinsurers as our clients, where we screen and profile, 500,000, 1 million of accounts on an annual basis, and delivering this data back to them on an aggregated exposure, but also on broken down to each and every single policy in that portfolio. So the second issue, and I mentioned that, is actually the qualification in the intermediary space to really have a conversation with the client on the same eyesight in terms of what is your exposure, what is your risk, and how can you actually mitigate that? The stuff you can't mitigate, what are the chances to transfer that to somebody else, i.e. the reinsurance market? Those broking firms which work with us, we feel that they have, it's not only we feel, we see it in their numbers, that they have much more success in selling this product because they become the trusted advisor for their clients based on the information we provide them in our profilings. So these this focus, this clear razor-sharp focus on the problem which needs to be solved, and then solving this problem and then market it, I think this is really something which is predominant for successful startups, if you ask me.
So I'm sure that at this point the audience is asking itself, how do you do it? What's the role of AI to automate and to take decisions in a larger scale? Or are there other technologies that you are utilizing in order to impact? Because when you started describing it, I was thinking, Markovian chains, all kinds of different solutions, but basically it was a chain reaction. But in aggregated events who are not really random, however, have a certain correlation to a preliminary event that impacts many other things, and you don't know where and how it's going to spread. So, and that's why statistically, I was starting to think in that direction. So what is the technology that you're using to make it a success story?
I mean, what we use, first of all, right, the technology we developed, right, is actually a fully patented algorithm, which we named Foreseen algorithm, right? It's fully patented for CyberWrite. What we do is actually we look for information in the internet and in the dark web about a certain company, like a prospect, and this information, right, and this could be hundreds of thousands of data points we actually gather, are then fed into our machine, our engine, our algorithm, and this algorithm basically compares it to 300,000 other firms which we pre-profiled already, and these of the same segment, same size, same jurisdiction, and some of them actually had breaches, some of them didn't, and every breach is actually torn apart into the various reasons why there was a breach. So all these calculations, and there are millions of calculations based on what I just described, we calculate a cyber risk score, cyber insurance risk score. And that cyber insurance risk score goes from 0 to 100, 100 being the best and 0 being the worst. Now, it's not only that score which we actually determine, we also compare this company and the score with peers, same size, same jurisdiction, same class of business. So you get immediately an assessment of not only the quality in terms of risk prevention, in terms of cyber attacks for that company, but you also get that risk component attached to it out of that benchmarking exercise with 300,000 of other firms. So, and that actually results into a risk report we actually put together for this organization. So it's not only the score, it's not only the score for the company, which we call the residual risk score. It's not only that score for which serves as a benchmark. We then actually list all the vulnerabilities of this company as we identified them, be it in their own technology they use, be it on passwords appearing in the dark web, etc. Lots of information, and we provide a risk mitigation recommendation to it. So, for example, when you work with a broker or an agency, they produce this report. They can actually take this report, have a discussion with their client in a meaningful way, in an educated way, leading them through these entire findings with regards to that report. We basically do the calculation on the economic impact analysis, which basically means if this company gets hit by an attack, how much would it cost, and how much would it cost by coverage section of the policy and in the aggregate. So we provide, for example, based on the vulnerabilities as we actually identify them, for this company, we provide them with a list of regulations. They're already in violation before a breach actually happens, and so forth. All of these things are actually included in this report, and this report is designed in a way that all of the recommendations to improve the underlying exposure are in fact actionable, and they're easy to understand. You don't actually have to be a cyber expert in order to act upon it. So, and we find that clients who work with us, and by the way, we work on a global level, right? So the platform works in eight different kind of languages, and we can actually add languages as there is need. We have clients in Asia, in the Philippines, in India. We have lots of clients in the US and in Europe, in Latin America, etc. We're really operating all around the world. Why? Because we can actually, the platform doesn't work on an existing, I would say, data storage. We don't actually pre-profile clients and actually put them on the shelf. And as soon as you want to pick them, we pick them off the shelf and hand them over to you. So everything we do is in real time. Every request which is actually going through the platform is identified in that moment. That leads to the fact that 99.97% of the companies you're looking to actually get this report under our platform is in fact delivered, and that is a clear differentiator to the rest of the market. Not an awful lot of companies can do that. I would say not only not an awful lot. I think we're the only ones who actually are able to really deliver that, and that is really massively important for smaller end businesses. It's easy to find a Siemens or a Teva or a Boeing on the web and find information for them. But it's not so easy to actually find an SME or a small business unit around the block in Brunei or in India or somewhere else. And in fact, you can actually find them on our platform, which I think is great.
Amazing. And I think that thanks to that technology and innovation, you won a few awards. Now, earlier we touched that a little bit. So which awards did you win recently that we should talk about?
Honestly, much more important to us than winning the awards is winning clients. And we are very proud, that we actually had a very fantastic year in that respect. And for us, those clients who actually make the decision to join us in a partnership is in fact for us, we're super proud of that. We're super proud to say that we did win MAPFRE as a new client. We did win a few more. MAPFRE is out there already. PR is agreed, and we can actually openly talk about that. The others are still in the making. Contracts are signed, but the PR is actually currently discussed, which is great. We won the largest broking company in India, which is global, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic win. And India is, by the way, is a market which is just blowing through the roof in terms of interest for cyber insurance, which is super interesting. A lot of people talk about the US, but there are other territories around the world which are also very interesting. So we do work with HSBC's Munich Re in the US now since the beginning of the company, since 6 years now. And they recently, after another large tender, we are super happy and proud that they extended their contract with us after we actually successfully did go, win that tender out of, I think, 14 different kind of players, which is great, right? And this is it's great for us to see how our clients and customers work successfully on the platform, and this is what we're geared up to. So yes, winning an award is fantastic, but winning a large client is even better because they prove it, and they prove that the technology is successful. Now we have this proof now since 7 years. We're 7 years in the market, and we have a lot of testimonials from our clients where they say how they actually use us and how successful they are in using CyberWrite. Yeah, so it's a great story. So it's looking back for this year. It's been exciting, but it's a very good year.
So as we pass the 30 minutes mark in our recording, most likely I'm going to cut myself out in the episode like I do all the time. So when you hear it, most likely it will be only 21 minutes in, but we like to keep it short and crisp. So I have two last questions. One is more about the future of InsurTech and the role of cyber. How do you see that? Because from my perspective nowadays, especially as an investor, as an investment banker, I talk with a lot of startups. I see a lot of them are in a challenging position, and we've seen at least 3 waves of InsurTechs coming in, coming out, changing. What's the future of InsurTech? How do you see 2024 for the InsurTech industry?
So if you ask me about the future of InsurTech, right, my view is a little bit longer term than just next year. So I remember how it started, right? So the initial start of that was, and that was before most of the large insurance corporations actually did invent their X's, like the Allianz X or the Howden X, or so their venture arms, right, to actually support this part of the industry for strategic reasons and and for investment reasons, right, way before that. So my view is there was interest. A lot of people looked into what is out there, how can they actually solve our problems. But at the end of the day, after the presentation and the first conversations, right, thank you for sharing your views. I think we better do it ourselves. So there was not really an awful lot of pickup in that respect, right? So it's and that is actually quite a sad story, and this is how it started. Then after a certain time, and quite honestly, we feel this as well, right? We did present to a lot of carriers. Carriers listened to it, and I said, "Oh, very interesting, but we're doing it ourselves." When we did follow up 5 years later, we found there was not really an awful lot of things happening, and in fact, they have not developed anything. I mean, it took us 7 years to actually deliver the platform as we speak today, which is very successful. How do they think they can actually start doing something like that and slim down the timelines on 7 years down to, let's say, 7 quarters? It's not going to happen like this. So the next phase, then all these venture arms of the large carriers were actually established, right? And they started investing in these organizations where they actually saw strategic fit, and where they also saw, an opportunity to actually make financial gain. And I think that this really changed the entire environment. And this is when really large insurance carriers and large broking houses started to embrace this entire venture of startups much more. And I think since that happened, the startup scenery has become an integral part in the digitalization story of the insurance industry. When you see the amount of companies and the amount of takeovers, the amount of investments done, the amount of declared partnerships between large corporate firms and startups in the insurance space, it's picking up every year. And I think this is a fantastic view, and I think this is not going to go away, because when we speak about the digitalization of the insurance industry, we're talking about a massive challenge, and because you actually have to look at it from different kind of angles. You have to look at it from a segmented point of view, like personal lines, right? Personal lines is already pretty pretty far in terms of digitalization, right? Then you compare it to the SME space. You compare it to the next segment, which is the mid-corp, then the upper mid-corp, and then the large corporate space. When you go through these segments, right, a lot of things happened already in the SME space where you basically have a B2C environment, but not so much happened yet in the large corporate world. And the large corporate world, there's still a lot of catch up to do. And I do believe there's room for improvement, massive room for improvement. There's massive room for new ideas injected into this industry. And I think today, most potentially, new ideas and new solutions will be embraced much, much more than only 10 years ago, when that was still not the case. And the need is clearly there. So if you ask me for the future of startups in this industry, I think the future is bright, and people should focus on that. Stay tuned and approach it from an open-minded view. Approach it, share your problems, share your challenges with the industry, and I'm pretty sure that there are very smart people out there who'd love to actually come up with a solution with that.
That's wonderful. So let me ask you the last question that, well, it will be kind of the similar question that I ask everyone at the end, which is, given advice and given your track record and your experience as an underwriter, what would you give an advice for underwriters who are starting or actually already in the middle of their career, and they're looking at all the AI and the Gen AI that is coming up? What kind of an advice would you give them?
To sum it all up in one sentence, don't fear, embrace it. Because if you fear, it will happen.
Okay,
it will happen. Done. If you fear it or if you don't fear it, it will happen.
Done.
So be open-minded.
Because I just wanted to. You were already in the previous question, in your previous answer. You already started to answer it. Yeah. It was like, this is just that's a perfect continuation. Fantastic, amazing. Hartmut, thank you very, very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to hear about your story, the origin story, and of course about CyberWrite. I appreciate your time and of course your knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you as well. Gilad, take care. Bye-bye.